right, welcome to the Explainer. Today we are tearing into the massive migration update in Infinity Kingdom. This is a big one, folks, because it basically hands the keys to the entire kingdom over to one person, the king. So what's the bottom line? I mean, what does this really mean for you? It's pretty simple, actually. Kingship? It's not just a fancy title anymore. Oh no, it is now the single most critical piece of the puzzle for your server's entire migration strategy. This one change, you guys, it completely flips the script on the whole political landscape of the game. Okay, so here's how we're going to break this all down. First, we'll talk about the new gatekeepers. Then, we got to understand this new thing called command power. After that, we'll get into the special migration slot, the king's two big choices, and finally, the new rules of recruitment. Just follow along, and by the end, you'll know exactly how this is going to shake up your game. All right, let's kick things off with the big picture here. You know how migration used to be, well, a pretty open door? Yeah, those days are over. Gone. Now everything, and I mean everything, flows through one single person, the king. They are the new ultimate gatekeeper. They decide who gets to come in and who has to stay out, period. But okay, how does this new gate actually work, right? Like, what's the rule book? To get that, we have to talk about the new law of the land, this benchmark called command power. This number is basically how the system decides if you're powerful enough to need a special ticket. So what is command power, technically? Well, the game calculates it every single day. It looks at the historical highest power of a server's top players and takes an average. And this is the key thing right here. It's not a static number. It's a living, breathing benchmark that shows how strong your server is right now. As your top players get stronger, that number goes up. But look, don't get too bogged down in the nitty-gritty math. Honestly, the most important thing to remember is this. Just think of command power as your server's official power level. It's the bar. It's the high watermark that every single person trying to migrate in gets measured against. So, that leads to the obvious question. What happens if your power is higher than that official server level? Well, that's where things get really interesting. Because now there's a price of admission. You gotta pay to play. And that payment comes in the form of a brand new, very valuable resource. So who exactly has to pony up? Who needs to get their hands on one of these new exclusive special migration slots to get into the server? It's actually a super clear line in the sand now. If your historical highest power is less than the server's command power, you're good. You can migrate freely, no problem, just like the old days. But, and this is the big but, if your power is higher, you absolutely have to use one of those special migration slots to get in. And man, are these slots rare. Just look at this. A brand new server, you only get 5. 5! As you move into Conquest seasons, that number goes up to 10. And then for Legendary seasons, you get 15. That's not a lot, right? This scarcity makes every single one of these slots a hugely important strategic asset. And here's another thing you gotta remember. This isn't a permanent stockpile of slots. Nope. They're a seasonal resource. That means they completely reset at the start of every new season. It is a classic use 'em or lose 'em deal, which, makes deciding who gets a spot that much more intense. Okay, so you've got the king as a gatekeeper, you've got the command power benchmark, and you've got these super limited slots. All of that leads us right here to the single most game-changing part of this update, the absolute total authority the king now has over who gets to use these slots. So what can the king actually decide? I mean, what is this new power that suddenly makes wearing the crown so important? It boils down to a really simple choice, but one with huge consequences. The king basically has one big switch to flip. They can choose to allow special migration, which means the gates are open for powerful players to use those slots, or they can disallow it, and that slams the door shut, putting up a giant no vacancy sign for any big player trying to get in. And check this out, this is a really important detail. You can't get around this decision. Even if there's no king on the throne, the system just uses whatever the last king's settings were. That gets locked in. Just think about that for a second. A king's last act could be to lock down the server's borders for good. Okay, so let's get practical. What does this all mean on the ground? Let's talk specifically about brand new Season 1 servers. You know how they're always trying to recruit those powerful jumpers, those veteran players starting fresh to get a huge head start? Well, yeah, the days of a whole army of jumpers flooding a new server, they're officially over. Why? Because a new Season 1 server only gets 5 of those special slots. That's it, just 5. That means a new server can only bring in a maximum of 5 players who are stronger than their current top dog. Now, to be clear, this rule is really about managing that first wave of super powerful players that can throw a new server completely out of whack. It's not trying to stop all migration. Anybody with power that's lower than the server's top lord can still come on in, totally free, no slot needed. So if you take away anything from this, it should be these 3 things: control, scarcity, and strategy. The king is now the gatekeeper. Powerful players have become this super limited resource thanks to the slot system. And because of all that, every single server now has to be way more careful about who they choose to recruit. And that leaves every server and every king with one massive question to answer, a decision that's going to define their entire strategy for power and growth from now on. Is your kingdom's gate open or is it closed?